Alright, the last part that we're going to be covering in this series for Stone Pillar is how we can build these various grass blades that you see here in our design, and we can use that as an insert mesh brush, and we can populate this area with these different grass blades and different kinds of vegetation that we make. So what we've looked at in the earlier parts of the video is how to make that first individual grass blade. I'm going to hide all the grass that we have here at this point, and I'm going to unhide this single grass blade that I have and put it on solo, and then just turn on the visibility of that, tap F to frame in, and we'll just take a look at what we've got for this. So we just did a very simple cube and then use the Z modeler brush and then crease some of our edges to kind of work on that for this singular grass blade that we have. I'm going to turn this solo off real quick. The other thing is, when I use this insert mesh brush, what it's going to allow us to do is get a brush, and we're going to be able to click and then drag it off of any of our 3D objects that we have. The only problem is this brush does not work with anything that has subdivision levels. So my ground plane I was sculpting with does have subdivision levels. So what I can do for that, I can just duplicate this thing off. I'm just going to rename this to floor like this to make it a little bit easier to know which is which part. And then I'll duplicate that and I'll call this floor underscore IM for insert mesh brush. And then I'll hide the old floor just so it doesn't get in the way. And then I'll go to geometry and open that up. And then you can see I've got these sliders here. I don't need the highest subdivision level. I just need a representation of it. So I could drop it down if I want. If you want to keep it on the highest one, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. But if you want to save on some performance, drop it down a few subdivision levels like this, and you can click delete lower, and you can click delete higher, and then that basically freezes the mesh in whatever state that it's in, and so we can take a look at it. And then now this will allow us to use an insert mesh brush on this piece of geometry. So that's going to make a little bit more sense as soon as we start creating them, but I just wanted to get that part out of the way and just describe it to you, because if you start working on this and jump ahead a little bit, you might be a little bit confused as to why this brush isn't working. So go back to the grass blade like this. I'll hit Alt S to put it on solo, and then I'll angle my camera like I'm looking down basically the barrel of a gun, I guess. You could kind of put it that way. And then I just tap B, and if we go down to create insert mesh like this, it'll ask us if we want to build a new insert mesh brush or append it. I'll just say new like this, and then that's starting to make an insert mesh brush for us. Now if we click and drag out, you can see it's gonna drag out that piece from the surface normal that we have. I'm gonna hit undo for that. So we know that that's working. And what I was saying about this looking down the barrel of a gun, if you want the orientation to be correct, think about this thing growing off of the surface like that. The other thing that we have, if we go to brush, let's take brush, click this, drag it over so we can kind of see all the options for this. If we go to depth, there's a depth setting for this, and if you want to embed it into the surface further, you drag this down. So watch as I click and drag this out. It's embedded deep into the surface. If I drag it down just a little bit here, we've got a little bit of depth. So depending on what you make, you might need to play around with this depth setting. I just need to drag it down just ever so slightly. I just want it to go into the surface just a little bit. Okay, so there's the first one that we have, and then I'm going to take this grass blade. If you want to keep it around and make sure you're not going to do anything to hurt this grass blade that you've made, you can duplicate it and keep working, or you can just keep working with the one that we have here. I'm going to put it on the move brush. I'm going to scale this thing down, scale it a bit wider, and scale it down. I'm trying to make this blade, this grass blade, a bit fatter, I guess you could say, a little bit wider, and maybe orient it like this and through here. Now if I want to tweak it a bit more, I can put it on the move brush. So I'll tap 4 on my hotkey, or you can go down here like this, and we could click and drag this out like this. So we're just doing an alternate version of this, and I'll put it down here like that. I'm going to go to tab B, go to this insert mesh brush that we have, and I'm going to go tab B and say create insert mesh. And this time, instead of doing new, I'm going to click append, and I'll hit OK for that. And you can see now we've got this second grass blade put in here that we can click and drag out. We can control the depth with it and set that. So now we've got 2 grass blades within our settings that we have here. Okay, I'm going to make another version. I'm going to take the move tool and scale it this way quite a bit, and then I'll just put in the move brush, tweak this a bit more, kind of like that. Let me see here. And remember, we can always hold down shift and smooth that. If that's super strong, I'll hold down shift, drag down the intensity like that. So let's push this over just a little bit more. Like that. I'll angle it. Tab B, go back to our insert mesh brush that we're starting to build up. Tab B, and then say create insert mesh, and then we'll append it. Hit OK. And now you can see we've got a third version that we can start to click and drag out. Now you can see the depth of that one. I probably want to pull that down just a little bit more, like that. Okay. And I think that's pretty good there. I also wanted to make another version. I'll go back to this. I can actually do this with the undo history and run it back to the very first version that we had. So I'd want another version that's maybe even taller, a little bit wider, and then I'll do a version like that. Go down the center, tab B, create insert mesh, append it, and hit OK, like that. And then I will do another version where I'm just gonna move this around a bit, and we've got something like this that's just maybe a little bit more interesting from a shape standpoint instead of straight up and down. Look down this. I'll go back to that brush that we had, tap B to go there, and then say B, create insert mesh, append, hit OK. And then now we've got quite a few different versions, okay, like that. And then I'm going to potentially do this. If we wanted to make a brush that's got multiple versions of this, if we put on the move, if I hold down control, I can drag out a copy of this, rotate it, maybe scale this one up a little bit, hold down control and drag that one out. Maybe make that go a little bit lower, and then I'll tap 4 to go to my move brush, and then maybe I'm kind of tweaking these just ever so slightly. Like that. Go back to their insert mesh brush, look down here like that, and then I'll tap B, create insert mesh, and append, and hit OK. And now we've got another version here. And so what I did for that, I just kept duplicating parts. I actually took one of the blades that we had and then tweaked it out, duplicated it multiple times, and then came up with this looking more like flower petals almost. And we've got that, and I can tap B and I can say create an insert mesh and append that. Hit OK, and you can see that becomes a new type that we have here for that. And then now I can go to the floor that I created. I would take this insert mesh brush that we've made, go to brush and save it and give it a name, so you've got your own grass brush that you've got. And then it's a matter of taking this and starting to populate populate things with on there. So I'm going to hit undo for that. Let's just go here on this. I'll drag these out. And I was actually starting to wonder why those pieces of geometry that I drew out were not showing up. It's because we have that texture on with the alpha. So let's go to texture map. And let's just click texture on and click that off like that. So I'm going to hit undo. Turn that off. Let's get undo here. Okay, we've got these pieces. And then now I'll click and drag out a few more like this. Go here. After I get a few on there like that, I'm gonna hold down Control and deselect. Now, if I hold down Control and Shift and I click on the this plane that we have, if I go to Subtool, I can go to Split and I can say Split Hidden because those parts are hidden. I hit Control Shift and then clicked on that just to hide the other parts because it's making polygroups for us. If I bring that all back, let's just make sure that that's really clear. You can see all the polygroups that we've got on there. If we hold down Control Shift, click on this, it's going to hide the other parts immediately. And then we can say Split Hidden. And then now we're starting to build up these plants that we've got going on. We no longer need this floor to drag out from, because I'll show you in a second here. We'll hit delete on that floor. And then now we can turn on dynamic subdivision levels. So we can tap D on these. I'll say always yes for that. And then that's going to take the geometry that we have and up the poly count for us visually. So that looks a little bit nicer. And if we want to drag that up even more, we can go to geometry. We can go to dynamic subdiv and then drag that up to maybe 3 or 4 or something like that. Okay. Now if I take it off solo, we've got this here. And we can bring back our ground plane or floor. And then now, as long as I'm on this same area, I've got something that ZBrush registers as, hey, I want to drag out some different copies from this. So now I can use the insert mesh brush and I can still drag off of items and it feels like I'm dragging off this ground plane. But really what I'm doing is it's all contained within this subtool right here. We just needed to get one piece kind of going, and then we can kind of continue to use that tool. So again, try out the different types that you have, and that should give you some nice variation that you can click and drag out for stuff. So it might take a little bit of time to draw this stuff out, and if you're not careful, you could kind of pull it out from another part, and that'll look a little bit weird. So this part is a little bit time consuming. If we've got these thinner blades, I was doing some stuff like this. Don't forget, we can always hold down Control, unmask these things, put it on the move brush, and you can kind of tweak this and move this around. And if you need to change the depth of any of those things, you could do that. You could also put it on inflate, and if you wanted to blow up some of the blades of grass and make them a bit thicker, you could inflate on them like that. So that's a possibility for you as well. So let's just inflate these a bit more like that, and then I'll tap B to go back to that insert mesh brush. We've got this here. That's probably my least favorite one right now, just because I like something that's a little bit thicker to fill out some of the space. And then these flower petal things are kind of nice, so I'm not sure exactly what plant type. If you want to be very, very specific, you could load up some reference, try to build some meshes for your insert mesh brushes. The other thing is you could totally make insert mesh brushes out of models that you have created inside of Maya. So if you just import as an OBJ, you can import them into the program, and then you could append that to your insert mesh brush. So that's a possibility for you as well. Okay, so this is basically the techniques that I use to build up these parts here. And that should give you a nice way of creating a bunch of different grass blades and things for you to use at that point. I'm going to hit Alt and try to find this. I've got these different pieces here. Let me go here to that, just like that. Do a render, final render for this piece. And then that will wrap up this entire series. So I think you've been given quite a few different tools and techniques to think about for creating not only stone type, but being able to set up a little tiny diorama and then build yourself some nice renders inside of ZBrush to show your work off in a more professional kind of way.